Nej men hej allihopa, det var länge sedan. Today we're gonna talk about all the important stuff regarding Swedish adjectives. And of course, you can read all about this in the new edition of A Lagom Guide to Swedish, and you can practice in the very new A Lagom Workbook to Swedish. This one works for both the first and the second edition of this one. So if you want to get these and take your Swedish to the next level, you can look down in the description down below for the links to those books. Now, Swedish adjectives are a little bit tricky because, like in many other languages as well, we have to change them according to the noun they are describing. For instance, what gender is the noun? Is it singular or plural or in the definite form? But at least it's not German. Let's take an adjective. Stor, for instance. Stor. So we have en stor bil. A big car. En stor bil. This is, let's say, the foundation, the basic adjective stor. Right? It's used with en words. But if we want to use it with ett words, we add a t. And it's as simple as that. Ett stort hus. Ett stort hus. A big house. So you have the version with nothing added to it, and you have the version with a T. Now in plural, we add an A. Stora bilar. Stora bilar. So we have the basic form of the adjective stor for N words. We have the T version for ett words. We just add one T, one single T. And then for plural and the definite form, we just add an A. Right? So we have stor, stort, stora. That's easy, right? But there are a few things we need to talk about. As you probably already know, Swedish nouns, they get an ending in the definite form instead of an article like in German or in English. This would be the equivalent to the, right? We don't do that, and we haven't done that for 1,000 years, right? So this is the same in several Scandinavian languages. For instance, let me demonstrate. So for the indefinite form, we add en bil, for instance. But then we put it basically at the end for the definite form. So we have bilen. But when it comes to adjectives, and when we have an adjective in front of bilen, we need to add another article. We call this the double definite. Now, it sounds tricky when I talk about it, but you really only need to know this for adjectives. So it's not stora bilen, it's den stora bilen. There are exceptions, and we're not going to go into that right now, but you really need to know this. Den stora bilen, not just stora bilen, most of the times. Another thing worth mentioning is that the T form of the adjective, the one for ett words with a T at the end, they can also be used as adverbs. Adverbs describe how something is done. So if we have the adjective snabb, and then we take the T form, which would be snabbt. Yeah, snabbt. It can also function as an adverb. So we have bilen åker snabbt. The car goes fast. All right? Bilen åker snabbt. So that's good to know. If you know how to construct or decline an adjective, you know that you can also use the T form as an adverb. Clever, isn't it? Now, before moving on to, comparison, good, better, best, and all that, let's talk real quick about participle, because they are basically adjectives. And participles are, when you take a verb and make them into adjectives, you get a participle. It's not important to know all these words, but it's important to know what they are and what they do. So, participle. we have the present participle would be the crying baby or the sleeping baby. The baby is doing it right now, and it's describing what the baby is doing. It's describing the baby as well. So the baby is just a baby, but if it's crying, it's the crying baby, right? Or a cooked meal. Someone has been cooking the meal, and now it's cooked. And this would be the past tense participle. It describes what kind of meal it is. It's green, yuck, but it's a green meal, right? It's a big meal or a small meal or a tasty. All these are describing the meal, but cooked also describes the meal, right? So, participle. And in Swedish, we add ande, the ending ande or ende, to the stem of the verb. So we have pussa. Pussa means to kiss. And pussande means kissing in the present tense. So a kissing couple, ett pussande par. And then we have the past participle, which would be pussad. And if you know the supine form, which we use to construct the perfect and the past perfect, you can see they are kind of related, and they are. And we would use pussat, which is the supine form. We would use that for T words or et words, of course, because we need a T there. And for the plural, we have DE. So no A here. So pussade. Pussad, pussat, pussade. All right? That's all the basics that you need to know. And now let's jump right into
comparison.
And this is pretty straightforward at times. Let's take snabb, for instance. Snabb was, right, quick. So we have quick. We add are, snabbare, and we get quicker. Snabbare, quicker. And then we add ast, and we have snabbast, which means quickest. Pretty straightforward, right? Nothing else to say about that, but let's move on to those that we don't use these endings with. Now, this is also the reason why I talked about participles in this video, because we use mer, more, and mest, most, with those. We also use them with adjectives ending on isk. So, for instance, fantastisk. Fantastisk is, you can't say fantastiskare. Well, you could, and some people probably do. These are, guidelines. As always, guidelines. There are probably people saying fantastiskare. But as you can notice, this is a bit bulky, right? If the words are long, we tend to use mer and mest with those. And this ending isk is also one of those endings that tend to get mer and mest. So we say mer fantastisk, more fantastic, and not fantastiker, like in English. And it's also pretty hard to say pussadare and pussandare, pussandere, pussand. It just doesn't work. We say mer pussad, mer pussande. If you want to do that, use mer and mest for that. Now we're come to the end of the video, and now I've collected a bunch of stuff that you need to know, right? You know the basics, you know the framework for dealing with Swedish adjectives, but there are a few things that you really need to know. For instance, when comparing some adjectives, they get an umlaut. An umlaut is when the vowel changes. So, for instance, we have stor, we have större, bigger, and we have störst, the biggest, right? So, o, u, turns into ö here. Then we have a bunch, or not a bunch, but I have a few adjectives that are irregular. And here we have bra, which it doesn't mean bra, it means good. And we have bättre, better, bättre. And we have bäst, best. It's the same as in English, yes. Then we have dålig, which means bad. and it's sämre and sämst, not dåligare or dåligast, although a few people do say that. Then we have liten, mindre, minst. Small, less small. What's it called? Smaller? Yeah, and smallest. So in Swedish it's irregular, and in English it's not. And we have gammal, old, äldre, äldst. There you go. So we have a few, not a whole lot, but a few, and these are important to know. Now, there are also a few which don't change at all. Woohoo! Lucky you! So the guidelines here state that if the word ends on an unstressed vowel, for instance, lila, doesn't change. Or if you have a participle ending on ande or ende, doesn't change. Or if it ends on an S, also doesn't change. So, happy times. Sometimes you don't have to think too hard. And right before ending the video, I want to kill off all your dreams and hopes and any spark that you have left. We have defective adjectives, which means they lack forms. And you have to think. You have to think around and come up with alternatives. So, for instance, we have kul, which only works with N-words because we don't have kult in Swedish. And we don't have kulia, or kula. Kula is something else. It's a noun. So people have started to say kulia sometimes, but it's really colloquial. And then we have rädd, for instance. Such a basic word, but it doesn't have an et form. A T form, right? It's super, super weird. Languages, everyone! Now, if you feel, wow, I learned something, and you're up for the task to learn more, you can check out this video, everything about Swedish verbs. Here you go.